It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Joe Fogg, CEO and founder of onDiem. And that stands for On Demand plus Carp Diem plus Per Diem. Carp Diem is used to urge someone to make the most of the present time and give little thought to the future. Per Diem is to pay a certain specified rate, allowance, or payment made for each day. So Joe Fogg was an entrepreneur from a young age and has always been drawn to working with like-minded people. He spent 16 years working for startup companies. As a senior executive, he created and implemented go-to-market strategies, ensured success in strategic development, and managed exceptional teams focused on sales and training. When he heard about the struggles dentists face when looking for talent in the industry and challenges dental professionals face when seeking extra income and benefits, he came up with the idea of onDiem. And I learned about this on Dental Town. It was Front Office Rocks, Laura Hatch, who made a post that says, also something that has not been mentioned here is the Dental Peeps Network. They have the option of posting on Facebook for free, and some cities have a branch of Dental Peeps Network that is called onDiem for job postings. So, man, thanks so much for coming on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, and I'm honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
The honor and pleasure is all mine. I love how your website talks about that the world is moving towards a gig economy in which temporary positions are common and organizations contract with independent workers for short-term engagements. The term gig is a slang word meaning a job for a specified period of time and is typically used in referring to musicians, independent contractors, project-based workers, and temporary or part-time hires. But you're right. I mean, look at Uber. I mean, who would have thought when I was your age that the largest taxi company in the world would be Uber and they wouldn't own a taxi car and it's all filled with independent contractors? Do you see that movement in dentistry? Do you see dentistry moving more towards a gig economy?
You know, I do. And it's so, have you ever taken Uber or Lyft or any of those ride shares?
I do.
Right.
My son Ryan installed the Uber on me, my iPhone.
Well, when you think about it right now, I hear from different dentists all day long that they used to have this hygienist work for them for 10 years, 15 years, that they've never had any really churn in their staff. And then all of a sudden, within the last couple of years, they're just constantly replacing different individuals. I think it's just a shift in overall the state of work, right? There's so many different companies, right? You know, Uber has other companies like Uber Eats, there's Postmates, there's TaskRabbit, there's all of these other verticals where this on-demand gig economy is happening. And, you know, throughout this interview, I'll share with you how I started onDiem, and there really wasn't like an end-to-end experience for clinical clinicians, right? To be able to come in. And so that's kind of where this came from.
Whenever healthcare professionals, there's 5 dentists that are in the Congress. There's none in the Supreme Court, none in the White House, but these 5 dentists, whenever you hear them talk about dentistry, I mean, like in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm in a really big city. There's no dentist open on Saturday afternoon or Sunday, but the policeman will be there, the fireman, the ambulance will take you to a hospital. And then when you talk to dentists and you try to say, well, maybe you should open one Saturday a month, they say, well, my staff won't do it. I mean, I've had all my staff for a long time. They're Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Do you see this company onDiem helping a dentist who just wants to temporary staff it out on a Saturday?
We're seeing it already all day long. One of the things right now is, so I'm going to touch base on that, right? You bring up a good point. Everybody wants on-demand healthcare, right? Everything's going to be on demand. You have, Netflix and Amazon Prime, and everybody wants everything readily and accessible right away. And so what happens is, in order to deliver and achieve on-demand healthcare, you have to have an on-demand labor force that can truly kind of flex up and down based on those patient scheduling. And I can say today, Monday morning, I saw the closed payment transactions just take off again. Every Monday we see them from all the shifts that happened on Saturdays. And one of the things that we see, we were at the Oregon Dental Trade Show this past weekend, and we had these clinicians walking by our booth, and as they're saying, hey, have you signed up with onDiem? They're saying, like, I've already worked 10 shifts through onDiem. And when they would say that, they said, I wish you would have more Friday shifts and more Saturday shifts available, because I normally work, Monday through Thursday for the private practice, but I would love to just pick up extra shifts on those weekends. And we're really starting to see those nationwide take off.
Now, when you're talking to these people, are they dentists, hygienists, dry hands up front? Are they wet hand assistants? Who are these people? Who's your main focus?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of all of the above. I mean, so one of the things that we had to do, so I don't know if you know, we're really young as a company. We're only 4 months old. We launched nationally towards the end of October. And so the challenge was we had to get both users on both sides. We had to get a bunch of practices to know who we were so that way they could post their needs on our site. And we do both permanent job placements and we also do temporary shifts for the gig shifts. But at the same time, in order to add value to those practices, we had to get a huge population of clinicians in all aspects, front-end staff, dental assistants, hygienists, and docs. And we really scaled up really fast on both sides of those so that way they can both help each other out.
So, or is it mostly a regional play? I mean, you're up there in Bend, Oregon. Is it mostly the Northeast, or are you where in your first 4 months? Where do you see it really taking off fast?
Yeah, actually, it's taken off nationally. It's pretty crazy. One of the things, and for example, at the very tail end of the show, I got a chance to meet one of the other interviews that you did. I met Hamish with Burst.
Yeah.
And I just really like that guy. And actually, I watched your guys' podcast, and I was cracking up because it was engaging. It was educational. Like, I wrote some notes down that I'll share with you that I was like, the educational points. And then also you had some quick recall of like different phrases, and I wrote those down because I loved them for one. And then also I really liked Hamish and his go-to-market strategy and how he's doing it. So we're kind of similar. He has, him and Brittany have a great go-to-market strategy where they're really working with a phenomenal network of hygienists and clinicians. So we have that same approach, but we have it twofold. We partnered with, they have a brand ambassador program and we have a territory manager program, but we also have that affiliation with the Dental Peeps Network. And so our reach and our scale to introduce us to go to market, it happened lightning fast. And so we were able to launch nationally. Now, behind the scenes, behind here, we have a huge infrastructure that we established to be able to register to do business in every single state and all that stuff as well. So there's just a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, that Hamish guy, he is how do you say his name? Hamish Kayat?
I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it is Hamish.
Yeah. And so the Dental Peeps Network helped you take off fast too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was looking at our go-to-market strategies, I had a couple of different ways to introduce us to market. One of them, actually, I wrote your name down because I knew about your podcast. I knew about Dental Town, and actually my best friend's a dentist and a lot of my buddies are. And when I was trying to talk to them, I said, hey, I have a social strategy, a school strategy, and I have the big industry magazine strategy. And I said, which of the ones are the big ones? And they would always mention Dental Town. And then that's when I heard about your thread. And my buddies would go on, they always go on to your site and they'll post like different cases and different questions and that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, so you're kind of one of my milestones, right? I was like, one of the goals to introduce us to market was to be on your show.
Well, hey, the honor is mine that you're on the show. It's funny. I was talking about it to a guy last night. I remember when I bet everything I had in 1998 on the internet when it was an AOL dial-up, and everybody, including my family, thought I was completely insane. But it's just so obvious. You just know it when you see it. So is this onDiem? Do you think it's obvious? Are you in 4 months? Do you see it really taking shape and form?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we already got 25,000 signups in 4 months. We're talking to, the thing is there's this common pain point, it is with practices. You have a $2,000 hygiene production day or a $1,500 hygiene production day. You get that call last minute that the hygienist is going to be out sick or the kid's out sick or something happens. And, you know, these practices spend so much money of a upfront investment to get new patients to come in. And those patients, you know, they come in once at best every 6 months. So when they finally come in and then having to reschedule that day is a really big pain point. And it happens more and more as the labor industry and the labor pool of talent kind of becomes more this millennial gig shift workers. And so with us being able to come in and add value instantly, to be able to fill that shift on demand, to allow that practice to take care of their patients, but while simultaneously we're allowing it so that that hygienist or dentist or dental assistant can earn a couple $100 wages. So I think that's one of the big differentiators that we have compared to all those other gig economies. And if you look at Lyft and Postmates and TaskRabbit, a lot of those are all lower wages, right? Those individuals, you know, by the time the taxes all shake out, their net hourly income is not that high. And the nature of the labor pool in this space, there's just all of these practices playing like a human game of Tetris with their clinicians. This hygienist works Mondays and Tuesdays. This is Wednesdays and Thursdays, and they want to, you know, we'll see ads where they're trying to post a job. We need one hygienist to come work Thursdays from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I mean, that's a tough spot to fill. So we're able to kind of fill those spots with a massive team of clinicians, and every day we're signing up hundreds.
You know, I know when I see it, I believe it. I called you. You've only been open 4 months, and you're already on my radar screen. I mean, the old days of having this long-term staff where they work Monday through Thursday 8 to 5 and a half day on Friday. I mean, that they're getting slaughtered around the world, from Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, for that young dentist who wants to do evenings, weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, and a staff is the big sticky part of it. When you say you had 25,000 signups in 4 months, how do my homies listening to this sign up? They just go to your onDiem, OnDiem, DIEM, onDiem, and then you got to tell them if you're a dentist or a professional. Is that what you mean by the signups?
Yeah, 100%. It's free to sign up. There's no monthly memberships. On the sign up button, it's going to direct you towards one of two paths. Find work means you're a professional, you're looking to pick up some shifts, or you're looking for a permanent home. Or post work, you're a practice, office manager, doctor, and you need to post work. And you're either going to post permanent jobs, which is no different than like an Indeed or Craigslist. You know, it'll last for 30 days on our job board, or you're going to post a temporary shift. And so that's how we set that up.
So would you say?
It's so funny how
would you say Craigslist is your major competitor?
You know, it's so fragmented. You know, you have Indeed, Career Builder, Dental Post. You know, one of the biggest ones is Facebook, right? People will post on Facebook, but I would definitely say Indeed and Craigslist. You know, those are the biggest one. You know, but I think sometimes people go down that path. A lot of the millennials aren't going to Craigslist these days. You have Indeed has such a branding awareness to promote it, and it's kind of misleading. You know, it's almost a pay-per-click, and offices will get so many different resumes, and you know they got to filter through those resumes to see who are good candidates. What we've been able to do is we have our huge audience that sees it in the local group when they post jobs with us. But what we also do is we instantly send out emails to what our equivalent of the brand ambassadors, which are those territory managers for all of those different dental peeps groups. And so you got to remember the difference between that social media group is they're hyper focused based on all of the different markets they're in. So they have 200 different groups that aggregate up to their 250-some thousand members. And so what happens is as soon as you post with onDiem, we then repost it in that local social media group. And so you know that most of the clinicians coming out of school, they're more likely to be on Facebook than they are Indeed and Craigslist and stuff like that. So we bring fast visibility in a social media setting, and again, also to our own platform.
I'm having a hard time understanding dental peeps. Are there different? I know is there a couple of national dental peeps? I mean, there's more than one, isn't there?
Well, yeah, I think, you know, the name with the peeps in it, right? It's a common kind of name that people use for different things. And the two guys that founded that, they scaled it rapidly. I mean, they were able to partner with different dental influencers, right, in those different cities. But the thing is, they were focused based on the city, and they were focused based on like collaborations within those different markets. The challenge was that they got overrun with different jobs. You know, Howard, it was so crazy. You would have office managers say that they need a temp shift for tomorrow, private message me. And what would happen is these people would private message that office manager who posted in that social media group. And it's not just their group, it's other groups too. And then the next day you would have, you know, patients waiting in your lobby, and the person that you private message hasn't showed up yet. And what they were being challenged with all of these different groups around the country to where office managers were not having the person that they private message show up. And I just thought, how could they be even shocked? They had no contracts, they had no agreements, and they faced those challenges because the person they never met that their private message didn't show up that day. So that's why they went to say, hey, there's got to be a better solution for this. And that kind of coincided the same time onDiem was just getting ready to announce to the industry about our platform.
Break down your 25,000 signups in 4 months. What percent of that is dentists looking for a job, hygienists, assistants, receptionists, versus an office looking for on-demand labor? What percent of it is an office looking for an ad versus dentists and hygienists, assistants, receptionists looking for work?
Yeah, so we signed up about 8,000 offices out of that 25,000. And, you know, when I was doing kind of my forecast and my sales and how many people we'd sign up, we far have exceeded that so far. I didn't think we'd have that many offices. I mean, it's a combination. We're getting both a lot of private practices, and we're starting to get a lot of the different DSOs that are signing up too. You know, we've definitely seen, you know, so I have a non-dental background. And so I didn't really know the differences as much between a DSO and these private practices. But we're seeing it coming from both sides. Both of them are challenged to try to find hygienists and dental assistants and associate doctors.
It seems like if you ask any CEO of a DSO, what is your number one issue? What keeps you up at night? What do you work hardest on? And they always say finding dentists and the employee turnover. And so I would imagine DSOs having a layer of management where they're scale enough to have someone full-time as a CEO, HR, financial, marketing, that finding, recruiting dentists and hygienists and assistants, it's huge on their table. I mean, some of these DSOs that have 500 to 900 locations, they'll tell you on any given day, they got 20, 30 dental offices not producing because they don't got a doc in the box.
You're so spot on. You know, it's actually this, when I was listening to yours and Hamish's interview, and you were talking about some of the, you know, the DSOs, how they'll get, you know, like a CFO in there, and they're going to use like, well, the percentage of people that are going to have this disease. There's certain things you said in that I was cracking up and laughing about. But you're right? How they look at it just purely based on the financials versus the preventative maintenance side of things, or the preventative care. I was laughing. I wrote down some stuff that you were saying that was making me crack up. But you're so true, right? You look at a private practice when that hygienist is out, right? If that's a $2,000 production day, and you have a couple of those, that starts to chew away your profit and your revenue pretty fast. Well, if you're a DSO and you have multiple offices, and you aggregate that lost production, that's a big number. So yeah, they've definitely gravitated towards us for sure to see if we can be another avenue to recruit for sure.
One of the things that I never liked about temporary agencies is that someone will come in and you just love them, and you say, "Oh my God, I want you to work for me full time." And then the temp agency wants, like, you know, 4 of your 5 grandchildren, your house, your car. I mean, they just make it so right. So what happens if I need a temp hygienist, assistant, receptionist, and then I fall in love with her and I want to keep her?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Right now we have zero recruiting fees. We're going to change that here in a couple months, and it's going to just be very small. I mean, we're talking barely $100 to $200 if we even do that. My philosophy is nickel and dimes add up to dollars pretty fast, especially on a national scale. And I have empathy for these practices. So again, my best friend runs a private practice, and I hear these different pain points that he has, and he would say the same thing. It's like, I want to try this person. They're great. They have all kinds of great skill sets, and they would just fit beautifully with the team at their office, but they don't want to pay $5,000 to recruit them. And so the way that we have an opportunity to not do that is because we do both sides. We do permanent jobs and temporary. And so that allows us to be able to not charge some of those fees. Now, one of the things that we are doing is one of our next code deployments, we actually are doing credentialing and background checks. And we're doing like onboarding through I-9s and first signatures and second signatures, that stuff. I mean, as it is right now, Howard, I provide workers' comp, malpractice, liability in every single state in the country. So we actually have a pretty big capital outlay to onboard these clinicians. And so if they only work one temp shift with us and then they get hired away, we didn't really have a chance to recoup any of our costs just to bring them on board. So that's my goal. My goal is only to be able to reimburse us for some of that cost. And it's not going to be much. So definitely nowhere near like those big, huge fees. Our goal is this, is if they can temp, if we can have an office use us to temp 10 days a year, we're doing just fine, right? We're going to make enough little bit of margins on those labor fees, plus a few permanent jobs. You aggregate that. And that's actually something that when you and Hamish were talking about, again, you guys are talking about the number of different licensed practices and license. As you know, it's a big market out there. And so there's plenty of opportunity out there for us to do okay in that regard.
So smart ones are into HR, and they have a office manual, and they got an HR attorney that they call if they got a problem. Is this, when I call your company onDiem.com and I get a hygienist to come work today, is she an independent contractor or is she an employee? What about the taxes? All my HR legal baloney crap.
Yeah, so I have a national legal firm, Fisher Phillips. They're like the top 3 labor attorneys nationwide, almost in every market. And so we really went through all that kind of stuff. But there's 2 kind of courts. There's the court of public opinion, and then there's like the legal court, right? And they're different. There's a lot of anxiety about what's called a misclassification of an employee. Can they truly be an independent contractor? Are they working under direction of control or direct supervision? In every state, it's kind of different. For the most part, there's ways that they can do it in every state to be okay. The sticking part is this, is do they make that employee show up for that day, that temp, and then go by the employee handbook? Do they sign non-competes and stuff like that? You would have one practice buy another practice, and then they would come in and they'd convert all of those existing employees to be 1099s, but they would never really tell them that. And they would have them sign employee handbooks and non-competes and all that kind of stuff. And so that created a lot of clinicians that weren't prepared for their tax consequences to be able to do that. So in our platform, as it is right now, they are independent contractors. They acknowledge that they're independent contractors, and they kind of maybe inflate their wages a little bit to easily offset their tax burden. Starting next month, we're changing that. We are onboarding them to be W-2 temp employees. And the main driver behind that is I didn't really realize that 80% of hygienists don't have health insurance. They don't have a 401k because they're working based on the Affordable Care Act less than 32 hours a week, because that's just how it's kind of navigated. So I wanted to be able to bring benefits to a lot of this population of laborers, but I couldn't do it if they were independent contractors. Now, if they're onDiem temp employees, now we can bring benefits to this population. We can guarantee that we're going to deliver a high candidate temp who's going to be loyal and show up and do all those other kind of things. And in return, we're going to give them some of those benefits.
So say your stats again, 80% of hygienists did not have medical insurance?
Well, they're not offered health insurance through their daily practice that they work full-time at, because even though it's full-time, typically they're less than 32 hours. Now, out of that percentage, there's probably about half that or a third of that actually do have health insurance through their partner, right? Because maybe they don't have health insurance because they probably didn't even qualify because they were less than 32 hours. But there's a lot of, in this industry, in this space, it's just the nature of the work. I don't believe private practice is intentionally doing that. A lot of doctors work 3 to 4 days a week, so they just don't get the hours to exceed 32 hours to qualify for the health insurance benefits. But I know that when I was 18 years old and I was going to college, I wasn't thinking about when I'm 24, am I going to have benefits, health insurance, and a 401k? And I think all of these clinicians that come into this space, they really, they have empathy, they want to help out patients and that kind of stuff, but they're really not thinking about, hey, am I going to have health insurance when I'm 23? I like the flexibility, I like the income wages that I'm earning, but they don't really realize that they're going to be missing out on that.
When I hear people talking about, their friends with benefits, I say, the main benefit is dental, medical, and a 401k. And it seems like all the friends with benefits, that's the two benefits they don't include. The healthcare system in the United States is so bizarre. I mean, you look at the 20 richest countries in the world, they all have what we have, Medicare, for everybody over 65. They just have Medicare for the whole population. And that seems to be the most emotional stuff, that and, gun rights and, some of these things. But it is a true crazy scenario, U.S. healthcare system. And to have that many hygienists who went to school 4 years, they'd be a nurse if they went into the hospitals, and their benefit situation is crazy. Students are always, you can't talk to them for 5 minutes without them telling you how much debt they graduated with. They got to tell you, they're averaging about $285,000. I got 2 dental schools in my backyard. I got one in A.T. Still in Mesa, Midwestern in Glendale. Yet every dentist my age that applies to have some young dentist come in and work Saturdays or Sundays, it's like there's no applicants. It's like, okay, so you really, really want to pay off your student loans, but not enough to work evenings and weekends. It's got to change, because I saw this whole thing change first in Australia. I've been going down to Australia every 5 years since 1990, lecturing in Auckland, New Zealand, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Gold Coast. About every 5 years, I've done it, 5 times or whatever. And my gosh, their competitive landscape changed overnight when they allowed foreign licensure from, if you had a dental degree from a country that has advanced dental schools, they gave you licensure. So they went from about 10,000 dentists to 11,000, almost 12,000, almost overnight. And that was what finally forced the young dentists to start doing evenings and weekends or Saturdays. But I still do not see that in the United States. Are you seeing it in your first 4 months, where of all these people signing up that they're young dentists who got a daytime gig and they want more hours to pay off their student loans?
100%. 100%. We're starting to see it. Well, I mean, you think about it, right? A dentist. So on our platform, you can easily go in and see all the professionals' wages in your market, what the going rate is or what the requested rates are, whatever the position is, hygienists, dental assistants, or doctors. And you're seeing rates from anywhere from 70 to 150 of an hourly rate. And it's the same exact challenge that the practice faces for the hygienist. If the doctor can't make it that day, they have a bunch of patients. If they can bring somebody in, if that doc can come in and make $1,000, 10 hours at $100 an hour or 120, whatever the rate is, and that production's still 5,000, right? Because the rule of thumb in hygiene is a 3-to-1 ratio of the hygiene labor versus production, and it's I think that follows suit a little bit too with the production for the dentist, and so it's a great way to still utilize that person. Now, of course, we are pushing that, right? But what I found out is there's so many of these docs that are, my age, I'm 46, that, 15, 20 years of dentistry, they want to go onto a spring break vacation with their family, but they can't do it because it's not only the cost of where they're going, but it's, 20,000 or 10, whatever that lost production is. But then you have all of these students coming out of school that really want to get their experience up. They want to be able to try out different practices for potential associate doc opportunities. And because we provide a lot of the liability and the malpractice and stuff, we're actually making it easy for them to be able to just kind of plug and play and go through that process.
So if you're a dentist and you want to be a temp to get some extra income because you graduated from dental school, either $280,000 in student loans, or you decided to get married and have children in dental school and you're coming out $400,000 student loans, or then you decided to go to ortho school afterwards and now you've been, I see kids coming out now, 700,000. There was an orthodontist in Las Vegas, made the Wall Street Journal. He had $1 million in student loans. But you'll pay for my malpractice while I'm temping for you, even though I have my own malpractice?
Well, we had to get it, right? We had to, one of the things that we had to do, we did raise some funds to get this venture off the ground. And what you really want to do is you got to protect everything, right? So we have the liability, the malpractice, the umbrella policies, the workers' comp, everything that we have to do to protect our company and protect our investors and advisors and everybody. And it's an easy thing for us to do, right? Because we get leverage of scale. And so within that, we get an opportunity to get a better premium buy price. So stuff like that. So it's different though than the...
So who did you go through for your dental malpractice? Who was your national carrier for that?
That is a good question. I went through a broker. The broker that I used. So we have so many different policies. I can't think of the name offhand.
So you have a you're sitting at 30,000 feet. I mean, if you got 25,000 signed up, you got 8,000 private practice dental offices signed up. You're getting a good macro view. Do you see some area? Do you see differences in areas? Like, is this taking off more in like big million city population urbans? Does it not work in rural or some states? California has 6 dental schools. Is it bigger in California than something like Idaho without a dental school?
It's so different in different markets. It's pretty amazing to see how we're growing in these different markets. And I love these kind of questions that you get because I can kind of see your dental questions. And I see your MBA questions kind of coming up. But before I ask this, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was watching your different podcasts, I think, how we, the people that are going to be on the interview, we receive like a little questionnaire. What I want to do, what we should do is you should have like a Stump Howard kind of questions on there. Because when I was watching, I was like, how does Howard have these dang recalls so fast for these different markets and that kind of stuff? And I was thinking, if you had like a geography question, right? Or like just some random trivia. Because I was like, the stuff that you recall, I'm like, where did he pull that from? All right, so yeah, all different areas for sure. Major metropolitan areas because of the density of those populations. And also in some of those markets, the dental peeps groups were really large. So we've grown fast in the major metropolitan markets for sure. We're seeing those. If you looked in, Atlanta and Chicago and Denver, Seattle, Portland, Philly, Boston, you're going to see lots and lots of signups, lots and lots of profiles. One of the things we haven't grown as much out, actually, ironically, in the California market, but this last 30 days, we're really starting to kind of take off in that market. So that's kind of exciting to see. And I know that is a market that was also more challenged with the controversy of an independent contractor versus W-2. So I feel like we're going to hit the ground running once we roll out that new platform in that space too. So yeah, but one of the things we are seeing too is I have labor rate statistics everywhere. I know the going rate for a hygienist in the Bay Area compared to what it's like in Little Rock compared to what it's like in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh my God! Tell us some of those numbers. I'm drooling just when you said that.
Oh God. So we have 2 different labor stats, right? We have the labor stats when they sign up to our platform. They put in their kind of requested rate, and different people do different things, right? They're gonna think, hey, I'm gonna temp. I'm gonna inflate this a couple bucks, but then what they post in their profile isn't the rate on what the practice pays. Here's our main differentiator from other staffing. We don't dictate the rate on what we're going to pay the clinician. The practice does. The practice sets the rate they're willing to pay. We mark up labor on top of that. And so we're seeing all of those different rates too. I mean, we're seeing $50, $60 in the Bay Area, $50 for hygienists, $55 for hygienists in Seattle, all the way down to mid-20s in some of the more, if you go down to the Southeast, Alabama, Mississippi, Little Rock, and some of those other areas, and I think there's multiple different things at play. Supply, demand, right? You have, if you're saturated with a bunch of hygienists, they're all kind of competing with each other, lowering their rate. It's almost kind of like, how Uber has like surge pricing,
right?
Or so we're seeing some of that for sure. But I'll see a stat come out through the ADA or something like that, and I'll compare that to what we're seeing. And ours are different. I think some of the reasons ours are different is because when you're a practice and you got a big calm day tomorrow, and it's a third of those are new patients, and you spend a ton of money on SEO and everything else to a cost to acquire that patient to come in, you don't want to reschedule and lose them. So at the time, you're willing to pay a little higher. Now, as I say that, that's also one of the biggest challenges we have. Sometimes you'll have office managers that'll say, I'm not going to pay $38 for a hygienist. Our hygienist only get $34. And I see, I understand what you're saying, but what does your hygiene column look like that day? Like, it doesn't matter. I know what you're currently paying your hygienist, but just if you interviewed a guy down at your county meeting, I wrote his name down, Dr. Spera.
Yes.
Yeah, and he said,
Sonny,
take care of. He said, take care. Yes, Sonny. He said, take care of your patients. And so when I'm talking to like an office manager, like, we don't want to pay that, you see, you're still total cost under $400. It's a $1,600 or $2,000 hygiene day. The business mind would say it's a no-brainer, right? Plus, you spent all that money to bring those upfront costs to bring those patients in. And also, if you reversed it, right, and you put yourself if you're that patient and you're gonna come in today, you finally took your time to go to the dentist because you've been avoiding it, scheduling it all up. And you're like, damn, I got to go to the dentist thing. You're gonna go. Then you find out they rescheduled you over $40 in a fee or $80 in a fee from a temp agency. Some of that business mindset that, like, if I had to do it over again, I told you one of my best friends is a dentist. And you probably noticed, I didn't really realize the stress that dentists are under, to have to be medically and clinically strong. And then to have to be like engaging to your patients and be likable and have a personality. And then to run a business, and then to be like a husband or a wife or a father. And like, gosh, no wonder I'm stressed out just talking to dentists, because they have so much that they got to know and they have no time to do it during the day.
Yeah, they have to wear a lot of hats, and the only way they're going to wear those hats is to bring on staff and keep them for a long time. I mean, these young dentists always ask me how I do it. Well, hell, I got 5 people that have been with me 20 years. I mean, when someone's been with you 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you don't have to do anything in that department. And I'll tell you what I like the most. I've used temps for 32 years here in Phoenix. And what I always like the most about temps and reps is all the reps from like Burkhart and Benco and Patterson Shine, they'll tell you that 80% of the offices try to blow them off, and don't give them any time. And I always sit there and thought, oh my God, you call on 40, 50 offices. I have so much I want to learn from you. And like when they would tell me about endophiles, my first questions, I just name like the 5 most prominent endodontists in the valley and say, what files do they use? And they tell me all about it. And with temps, I love temps because hygienist assistant or whatever, I say, how many offices have you worked in? And they just giggle, I don't know, 10, 20, 30. And I'll say, certainly you see something that someone else did better than us. What advice? And then when you get off your high horse, I'm not Dr. Farran and your little temp Lisa's like, Lisa, man, my God, tell me if this was your office, what would you change? And then she'll tell you, well, Dr. Mark Olson in Scottsdale, and I'm writing down his name, then I'm calling Mark. Hey, Mark, we both had the same temp. Yes. It's all about sharing. And sharing is not just on social media, Facebook and Dental Town and all that stuff. Sharing is in the flesh, man, like you're running for mayor. I've learned so much from my temps over the years. Man,
I'm high-fiving you right now. So if you had that many employees stick with you that long, I mean, that means you're showing gratitude and appreciation to them, right? There's sometimes people feel to be a leader that they have to be not narcissistic, but they kind of almost run like a dictatorship versus being like open and listening. And that's what I heard you say that you're doing. There was an awesome TED Talk just recently. But do you know, obviously the Golden State Warriors, do you know who Steve Kerr is? He's the coach of that. There was a TED Talk about him in regards to, it was about being an inclusive leader, right? Being willing to listen, to take your team's input and feedback. And so I'll just share the story real quick if you don't mind. So he was saying, there was this, in this TED Talk, it wasn't Steve. They were talking about Steve. When Golden State hadn't won, a championship in, I don't know how many years, 20, 30 years or whatever, they were down 3-1 against Cleveland in the finals. And Steve put out there, okay, what is it that we are seeing or that we're not seeing? And all of a sudden he made a change. He made a change in the lineup, and that lineup was like the pivotal point to cause them to win game 2. I mean, I'm sorry, to make it the series to 3-2, then 3-3. Then they actually went on to win the championship. So they're interviewing Steve Kerr about, hey, the pivotal moment was in that, I think it was game 5, when you made that change. Well, what was that? And he goes, the change was we made a change in our lineup, but it wasn't my change. It was one of our assistant to the assistant coach, who was this 27-year-old, assistant named like Greg Uron or something like that saw a matchup, but he felt so comfortable to be able to go to Steve and give that recommendation, because Steve Kerr had made this open environment to where if you have an idea or a suggestion that can make us better, he wanted to be like an inclusive leader, to be open to that. And so what happened was, during that interview, when he was asked about that change, he said it wasn't his change. He said it was Greg Uron's. And then he even gave Greg all of the credit for that change that got them to win the championship. But the fact that he was willing to listen and his team felt comfortable and he felt approachable, I think so many people don't do that.
Well, every dental consultant will tell you that, they don't even understand their own job, because they'll get to the office and on the first day, they just want to pull every single employee in a room by themselves for 1 hour and talk to everyone that works there. And if the doctor's spouse is involved, get that person there. And then they've got 20 pages of notes of everything that's wrong. Then they go home to their hotel that night, write up the whole plan, and then the next day present it to the dentist in the office. And they get paid $30,000 to $50,000 to just implement what your staff is telling them, and you won't listen to your staff. And if you think you're running a great office, it's very easy to measure employee turnover. If it's not working, what I recommend to the dentist is just quit doing it. You find dentists that are 10 years old and they don't have anybody that's been with, they're not building their core. And my biggest mistake is, my office is 32 years, but my management team's all 20 years. So it took me 12 years of chasing how to do the ultimate implant and LVI and AGDF, all this clinical stuff. And I should have been keeping my eye on the business first. I should have got my house in order and then learned all the clinical stuff. In fact, now you don't even have to learn all the clinical stuff, because you can bring in specialists to do all the work. I mean, why would you go invest in all this massive implant training when you can have a periodontist come in your office and place them for you, and you not only do you split the fee 50-50, but a lot of the insurances are paying the specialist 20, 30, 35% more than the general dentist, so you actually still make more money. Are you seeing that demand for specialists? Are people placing ads on onDiem.com for an endodontist to come in one Friday a month and knock out all their molars, or any of that stuff?
You know what? This is the third time that you're saying this. The third time somebody's recommended us to do that, to be able to add and kind of market that as a value proposition for these private practices to do that. Because there are a lot of specialists out there that want to grow their practice. And, as they're trying to get, and actually, you know what? Maybe I'll share with you real quick on how I started this business, and I'll rewind that a little bit. But it comes off of that same scenario. I saw on LinkedIn, even some of the posts you follow, you may see that I like your LinkedIn stuff, because I kind of crack up on some of the stuff you post there. Like, for example, that one that you posted a while ago, that little dog trying to jump up over that wall?
Right.
That's me. I'm stubborn like that. I'm just going to keep trying and trying. But you just posted one recently about Henry the dentist out in New Jersey. That's how I got into the dental space. I was going to do that exact same thing. I was going to do mobile dentistry. And I was talking to, out here in Portland, we have Nike and Columbia and Freightliner. And I actually met with the CEO of ADEC just south of us down in Newburgh, because they were part of the same YPO group that I was a part of with
Ken
my other
Austin.
ventures. Yeah, so the Ken Austin family was really close friends and philanthropists with another family called the Holst family. I was the guy that one of the last ventures for the Holst family. They were good. They were all part of the same Oregon Entrepreneur Network, and I was part of that. And so the company that I helped scale and build was that family's business. And so what happened was I was going to do mobile dentistry, but I had to learn what the top line revenue production would be in a 4-operatory or 5-operatory. What does it yield in production? What does it look like from an OI perspective? And so it was kind of similar to a little bit of corporate dentistry, but totally different. I was coming at it from the same angle that, you know, when you talked about doing your whole fluoride stuff down in Arizona to do all that preventative, that was my approach. I was going to come into these large companies and just do lots of hygiene, lots of preventative stuff. And I was going to build an app, kind of like Open Table, easy scheduling. Because one of the things is I never went to the dentist because I never had time. I was so busy. So I said, if the dentist could come to me, but I had to figure out how to do that. Well, when I was going through my business plan on that whole business model, I made some mistakes. I had thought that businesses were going to be open dentists on, 21 days a month, because that's the world that I came from. I didn't know that most private practices were only open like 16 days on average. The second thing that I made a mistake on is I thought what your production would be on a Monday, if it's, 8 to 10 grand in production, that you would consistently have that every day, all the time. So when I ran my financials and I was doing my due diligence and looking at other real world private practices, and I would see huge drop during the week in production, they build, Monday they do 10, Tuesday 9, Wednesday would drop to 3,000, and then it popped back up on Thursday. I thought that drop in production was because they didn't have the patients. That's when I uncovered the fact that they actually had their clinical staff was out sick, or that was a vacation day, and they would just reschedule the patients. And it was in that moment, Howard, that I discovered there was really no end-to-end experience to be able, that was a non-traditional staffing model, to be able to just find that person, you select that person versus us selecting that person for you. And then that's how the idea of onDiem happened right there.
I think Ken Austin, the founder of ADEC, and his late wife Joanna, just amazing people. And when I would had my 4 boys are all in their, my 4 boys turned into 5 grandkids. But when we go on family vacations, I would always stop. I'd hit every dental company along the way. And I remember when we were in Oregon, we stopped by Newburgh, Oregon. And on one end, you had all these raw materials, leather and metal beads. And at the other end came out ADEC dental chairs. But that Ken Austin literally came out of his office, spent hours with my boys, giving them a complete tour. Oh. And then his main hobby was refurnishing old cars. And then took him over and showed him all these old cars. But he just, what a great guy. That is so cool. But back to specialist, you come these dental schools, tuition is price inelastic. No matter, they figured out years ago that they raised the price $4,000 or $5,000, they had no decrease in applicants. So now you got all these private schools that are over $100,000 a year, and so they come out of school $400,000. They could be $400,000 in debt. The average is $280. But if I go on to become an endodontist, I got 3 more years. I'm paying $100, and I'm starting to finally see really smart endodontists and periodontists coming out of school and say, damn, dude, I'm already $500,000 in debt. I'm not going to go build some Taj Mahal practice. I'm in LA. I'm going to find the 5 biggest practices out here and go work a day in each one of them for a 50-50 split or a 40-60 or what have you. Depends on if they bring their own supplies, their own assistant or whatever. And they're just making bank with no overhead. And the other thing that Uber, relating it to Uber, Every patient I know that drives Uber or Lyft, I say, what do you like about it the most? They say, well, it's just fun driving around, talking to people. I really enjoy it. But what I really like the most is they pay me at the end of the day. When I clock out, my account is, so sometimes I'll be sitting there in the evening and I'll thinking, oh man, I want to go to Macayo's and I want to go, but I have any money. Hell, I need to go drive for a couple hours. And then they just go clock in on Lyft or Uber, and then 2 hours turns into 3 hours or 4 hours. They just love it. So it's really, so do you think that America is getting competitive enough that eventually dentists and specialists will graduate from school and say, I just want to be your dental Uber and work for OnDiem?
It's so interesting. I've been approached by a lot of other, big national staffing companies in the healthcare space for sure. And they're all called PEOs, professional employment organizations, to be able to create some of that model. We've had some of the big DSOs want to know how could we set it up to where you can be more of our fixed labor force to be able to flex up and down. But yeah, you bring up a good point. You had their dental school, they need a specialty school, and then sometimes they'll come out and they'll either want to buy a practice or they're going to want to start a practice, and then they got to finance all that stuff. So to be able to be at that age and have that much debt is just, that's very stressful. And so I definitely feel that we're already starting to see it. Like I just saw on some posts today that Arizona in hygiene, there was some sort of post that on social media, I just saw it, where Arizona is going to allow, if you're licensed in other states for your hygiene, it's completely reciprocal. You can just come to Arizona and still use you don't have to be licensed in Arizona, that you'll probably be able to use your reciprocity or whatever and be able to come work. And we get that all the time, where they want to say, now, almost like traveling nurses, they want to be traveling hygienists. And so with our platform, with the credentialing, that kind of stuff, they're wanting to know, can they just go to another market? We saw, randomly one market where we're doing really great in is Alaska. Alaska, no offense to the people in Alaska, but I didn't really put Alaska as one of my hot markets for our revenue stream. But we have people up there willing to fly people up and house them to come do temp shifts up there. So it's just, I definitely see it leading towards that direction. And one of the things that I forgot to mention when I was telling you about my mobile dentistry idea, what I was going to do is I was raising money at that time for that venture from specialists. I went to endodontists and periodontists and oral surgeons. I said, hey, listen, you guys normally call on a lot of private practices to kick you guys referrals. If you were to be the investor in this venture, when we go to these large employers, what we'll do is we'll send those referral bases to you. But that whole concept was part of helping them provide specialties, but also doing the whole preventative maintenance with the hygiene, the cleanings, and all that other kind of stuff.
Yes, what you're talking about in Doug Ducey, it's so funny because Arizona, I don't think they have any idea what it just happened. So the Air Governor, Doug Ducey, I posted this on Dental Town, and let me see, it's on Dental Town. It only has 2 replies. I've noticed a lot of things on Dental Town where some of the most profound stuff, it takes a while for them to get it, but Arizona could become the first state to recognize occupational licenses from other states. Licensing laws tend to lock workers in place, but Governor Doug Ducey says it's time to stop that foolishness. And this guy's got momentum. He's a business guy. I'm proud to say I've drank with him at a few parties before, and that's going to be great for Arizona dental patients, great for Arizona dental companies, dental suppliers, but it's not going to be great for dental wages. When I got here 32 years ago in 87, there were no dental schools, there wasn't fluoride in the water. And then some idiot put fluoride in the water named me with Jack Dillenberg, and then they built 2 dental schools, and now this Doug Ducey thing, my gosh, that's just going to be wowsy. How many, look how great the weather is down here. How many dentists up there in North and South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, Idaho, Maine, who just sit there and it's 20 below zero and they're seeing us down here on green golf course and says, wow, they take my dental license. This could be an avalanche of dentists to Arizona. Do you think so or not?
Oh, 100%. So I saw it this morning. So in the Portland Dental Peeps group, right, there was a post of that same ad or that same article, and it said something like, I'm going to work in Arizona in the winter, in Portland in the summer. It's from a hygienist perspective, like how many would travel down there. I mean, it's true. Like right now, I mean, up here in the Northwest, so my wife, she has her child psychiatry degree and she's a therapist, and it's so prevalent that there's, depression happens when it's rainy and cloudy all the time. And so people are always wanting to kind of go south for the winter. But if you can go south and you can work down there, I think it's going to open up a lot of people to come down. But to your point, will that supply and demand, will that influx of that many clinicians, whether on docs, will that drive the wages down? But hopefully it'll be able to hopefully not drive the wages down. It'll open up more days and more access, hopefully.
Well, it is just going to be huge what he did, and I can't tell you how many of my friends. I'm the opposite. I want to learn how to practice dentistry in Phoenix in the winter. I mean, in the winter, and then in summer go to Alaska. I mean, I would love to go to
fishing.
Oh my gosh, the Kenai Peninsula, the halibut fishing in Homer. Hell, I even drove one day all the way past Denali. I drove to Prudhoe Bay. I drove the access road. It's not even, they don't even have a highway from Fairbanks to Prudhoe Bay, but I was sitting there eating at a restaurant with my dad and my brother, and I said, I really want to drive up there. And they go, well, there's no roads. And I said, well, there's a big road over there. And they said, well, that's the British Petroleum Access Pipeline Road, and that's private property, and it's illegal. And I said, yeah, I know all that, but how often do you see cops arresting tourists from Arizona driving that road? And the guy said to me, he goes, truthfully, I haven't even seen a cop in 3 months. So we just drove it. I mean, it was just amazing. But yeah, the supply.
I feel like what you just said is a metaphor for your probably life, right? That you just go down whatever roads and you're going to kind of create your own path, right?
Oh yeah, and we got all the way to the Arctic Ocean. I was so excited to be able to see the Arctic Ocean. It was frozen over. All I saw was looked like a snowfield. But yeah, I think Arizona is going to have so many. And like I say, it's going to be great for the patient. It's going to be great if you're a dentist like me who wants to hire an associate. But it's going to put a lot of downward pressures on the associate's earnings, and that might finally drive them to evenings and weekends is what the government wants. Because when they study healthcare, the first thing that, everybody talks about affordability, it's also availability and access. And in Arizona, 8% of all medical room emergencies are odontogenic in origin because the damn dentist is unlisted, the office is closed, and if it's 7 o'clock at night and you have a stammering toothache, you have to go to emergency room. And it was like that way in Australia the first several times I went down there. Then they went from 10,000 to 12,000 dentists in about a New York second. And the dentists started immediately going to, offices started going to open up 7 to 7 days a week. You saw dentists flooding to rural areas. But again, the United States, my least favorite term in all of economics is the United States of America, because it's too big to make any sense. I mean, you can't compare Anchorage to San Fran. You can't compare Miami to Kansas City. You can't even compare Phoenix to Globe, Arizona. I mean, basically the United States it's the size of Europe. It's basically Europe. Right. And the Federal Reserve, a lot of really sharp people say it really operates as somewhere between 9 and a dozen countries all flying under one flag. So that's why I tell these young kids, the reason I'm so motivated to do these podcasts is because I love it. But these young kids, they need to get good information. They can't get out and with that kind of debt, they can't make a bunch of dumb decisions when they come out of school. They got to make some smart decisions. And the smartest decision you can make is that economics in 3 words is supply and demand. And you need to go where they ain't. You need to go where someone wants you. And if you're stubborn, you decide, well, I don't care. There's no need for a dentist here, but I just want to practice here. Well, you made a $300,000 bet on a degree paying itself back, and there's just a lot of places where dentists naturally take home $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, and there's a lot of places where that is just a very unnatural situation because it's so competitive.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of stuff like this. I know we're probably getting close to wrapping up, but this is the stuff that you're saying that I didn't know your podcast that you would drop these kind of stats or some of these business reference gems. Like one of the things that I know we probably got to get going soon that I was really cracking up about, but it makes such common sense. And I don't think this is sometimes educated in the schools. One of the podcasts you talked about people's buying habits, right? It's either from the head or the heart or another region that kind of helps motivate them. But so when you were talking about that, I like that. But then you also talked about when you see a patient that was pregnant, and you talked about, you know, how it transmitted orally with some of the decay. I never heard anyone ever say it like that. And it was such a eye opener for me. And then on the tail end of that, you talked about when you're talking to like the middle school kid or the junior high school kid that you're trying to get them to floss and do everything like that. And you mentioned something like, well, when she smells your breath, you know, 4 lockers away, how you just instantly were able to get that person to understand what the messages that you were trying to tell them. So I feel like, I don't know, little stuff like that you say, some people probably don't say it in the way that it should be said so that other people can understand it. I don't know, it was just really great to hear that stuff.
Yeah, because when you're talking to a brain, it's about a 5% profit margin on the S&P 500. When you tell a kid all the biological reasons to brush and floss, he just goes in one ear and out the other. But you go to his heart, now you got about a 15% profit margin. You go below the waist, now you're talking about reproducing offspring. When you associate brushing and flossing with increasing your chance of reproducing and having offspring, you have their attention. Those boys, you know, stand up and salute you like, really? This is part of the gig? But my gosh, I look at your area. You're, God, you got Seattle to the north. You got California to the south. California is 10% of the United States economy. It's the same as Canada. It's the same size economy as Canada, same population, number of dentists. You could literally spend 10 years and just stay on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California. I mean, you wouldn't even have a need to go to Iowa. There's so much business on that West Coast. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, the runway of opportunity that we have as a business is pretty phenomenal. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it's a huge population of dentists and practices and professionals. And our whole philosophy is, you know, try to do it the right way. You know, take care of the practices, take care of the clinicians, bring the benefits, listen. You know, we listen every week, bi-weekly. You know, we're getting constant feedback on what we can do to enhance it and improve it. And we put that into our development cycle, and we test it, release it, listen for feedback, and then we repeat it. And so, yeah, the market opportunity is pretty amazing.
Well, you should do a search for onDiem, and you'll find that thread under temporary services, and you should start telling them what to do. So basically what they need to do is they need to go to your site and to find out, they need to set up a profile. They're either going to look for, I'm either an office posting shifts, or I'm a provider and I need to find shifts. And how's it taking off? I want to ask a selfish question all about me. How's it doing in Phoenix?
We're just starting. We're starting to do pretty well in there. I mean, if you went and looked. So what we do is when you sign up, you enter in your address. We geolocate the longitude and latitude of your coordinates of your practice. And then from that point on, we then geofence around it, and we show you all the clinicians that are in that area when you're looking. So you could sign up a free practice right now. You could look at it, and you could do a find professionals, and you're going to see the hygienists and the assistants and the front office and the doc. Like I said, in different cities, we're growing at a faster rate. Our initial launch was introduced, again, by the dental peeps, right? And so depending on their different groups and how big their groups were and how active that influencer was in that market kind of dictated the speed at what we grew in that market. And so, you know, there's a Phoenix Dental Peeps group. And so there you'll see we get anywhere from, 500 ads a day. I mean, we're really blessed to be aligned with that social media group because, you know, they want to do, you know, collaboration of what's happening in that market, but go on a hyper focus of that market versus just a national market. So just kind of what you just said, how you said the United States is like, you know, 50 countries really just in one big country. everything is so siloed based in those markets. And that's where we've gotten our initial reach.
Who's the head kahuna in the Phoenix Scottsdale dental peeps? Whose world is that?
Let me pull it up right now. We're pretty blessed to have so many different strong. Let's see, it is Kathleen Sherba.
How do you spell Kathleen with a K?
Yeah, Kathleen. So she.
And what's her last name?
What's
her last name?
Sherba, Shurba. Like, for example, right now, I see that she just posted, looks like an ad for a practice in that market. And so that's one of the things that happens is when a job is posted on our site, it'll then get reposted in their group to kind of get more visibility for it as well. And we started kind of going viral.
I know her. She's a CDHC, RDH, BS, territory manager, brand ambassador at Dental Peeps Network. And right here in my backyard, Chandler, Arizona. That is so dang cool. You say that's the major marketing of your group right now?
Yeah.
Well,
it is right now.
Hell, tell Kathleen to come by and in my studio here. I mean, I'm in Phoenix. You got to have her come by to the studio and do a follow-up to talk about this even more because, like I say, I'm selfishly motivated. The patient wants one-stop shop. As much as I love all my specialists and all 10 specialties, grandma comes to your office, she just wants you to do it. And if you don't want to do the molar root canal, if you don't want to do the procedure, it's nice to have specialists coming by your office. And then for your working families, that just the Federal Reserve has the most PhD economists as employees of any institution on planet Earth. That's one of the reasons we have the reserve currency. And they got like 3,200 PhD economists. And they say 1/3 of America cannot access the healthcare system Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So you can't tell me you're patient-centered and you're patient-focused and it's all about the patient when basically your hours have just told 1/3 of your community to go to hell in a handbasket. And then your staff doesn't want to do evenings and weekends, but you got a solution to that. And who cares if your Saturday staff is all temp hygienist, temp dentist, temp assistant, whatever. And when I ask these rural dentists, well, why'd you get into molar endo? And they'd say, well, I hate molar endo, but every time I say you got to drive an hour and a half into town to get a molar root canal, they just say pull it. So I finally realized, they say they were worried about doing the root canal. They were worried if they were good enough to do it, but then they realized the alternative was extraction. It's like I was talking to, I don't want to say my mom because she might get mad, and we were talking yesterday about arthritis, aches, and pains, and I said, yeah, but it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative, being dead. I'm so glad we're having dinner tomorrow night. I think what you're doing is amazing. I called you. You didn't call me. If you want to do more promotion about this through the Dental Peeps Network, have Kathleen Sherba came on. I did podcast the founder of the Dental Peep Networks, Lee Duke, but I guess I understood in his deal that Peeps is a generic name, so a lot of people are saying that they're Peeps, Just like when I say, I refer to dentists as my homies, but that's not a legal thing.
No, you're right. Well, I know Lee. I talk to Lee pretty regularly, right? And Lee, one of the things I told him that I was excited to come on to your podcast and that kind of stuff. And he has some pretty big respect for you because one of the things that's different is you build something kind of similar, but the thing is it's yours, right? It's your platform, which is crazy that you were building this big dental practice at the same time. And you said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and build this magazine, this social awareness opportunity as well. I mean, that sounds like a sometime I want to have a drink with you and hear about how you started this, like what was the epiphany that you had to want to start it. At the same time, it sounds like you were raising 4 boys in a practice. That sounds like you were probably pretty busy too. But within that, you're doing the same thing. I watched another interview that you did, and I know you probably got to go with Dr. Was it Ochi or something like that, who's very probably active, it sounds like, on your messaging threads. And he mentioned sometime like on the early stages that there were negative people that were on there. And that's the downside of the social media strategy. You have a lot of what I call keyboard warriors, right? That they can just go on there and say something. So when I see people shift it to like the positive aspects, we have doctors right now saying, you know what, I wanted to open up another practice, but my biggest expense, or one of my next biggest expenses, is my labor pool. In order to have to hire somebody to have them come, I'm not going to go my new practice. I can't open it 5 days a week. I'm just going to open it 2 days to kind of test the water. And they were excited to use onDiem to be able to allow them to schedule on demand, because then they can get hygienists that they've known, that they've worked with, that they trust with, to be able to flex them up and down. So yeah, I don't know exactly where we're going to be at the end of 2019, but it's a pretty fun ride right now. And I'm excited to kind of see what we're going to do.
Well, I was very excited for you to come on the show. Thanks for all that you're doing for dentistry. I hope this is a massive success. Everybody wins from innovation and competition. And my God, you're the biggest innovator in this dental labor force. So it was just an honor to have you come on the show today and let me podcast interview. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.